There was a man in our small town named Arthur. He lived on the corner of Maple Street, in a small house with a yard that was always a little messy. Arthur was not a friendly man. He did not smile. He did not wave. When you walked past his house, he would sometimes stare from his window, and his eyes were like two hard stones. People in our town learned to avoid him. They would cross the street to walk on the other side. They told their children not to bother him. He was like a ghost in his own home, a shadow that everyone knew but no one really saw. He was simply the man on the corner, a label we gave him so we didn't have to learn his name. We all had our stories about Arthur. Someone said he yelled at the mailman once. Another said he slammed his door when a neighbor tried to bring him a pie. These stories grew, as stories often do in a small town. They became the truth about him. We decided who he was without ever asking. He was difficult. He was mean. He was someone to stay away from. It was easier that way. It is always easier to create a simple story about someone than to learn the complicated truth. We built a wall around him with our whispers and our assumptions, never thinking he might be trapped inside. One Tuesday I was walking my dog, and the leash snapped. My dog, a playful golden retriever named Sunny, ran straight into Arthur's messy yard. I felt a knot in my stomach. I expected yelling. I expected anger. I walked slowly to his porch and knocked on his door, my heart pounding a little faster than usual. The door opened just a crack. Arthur looked out, his face etched with lines of annoyance. I explained what happened, pointing to Sunny, who was now happily digging near his rose bushes. I braced myself for the storm that I was sure was coming, the storm everyone in town had warned me about. But the storm never came. Instead, Arthur just grunted. He opened the door wider and stepped out onto the porch. He looked at my dog, then back at me. "He's just being a dog," he said, his voice raspy like an old engine that hadn't been started in years. It wasn't a kind voice, but it wasn't a mean one either. It was just a voice. A human voice. And in that small moment, I realized that all the stories we told might not be the whole story. I decided right then that I wanted to know more. I wanted to know the real story of the man on the corner. I started stopping by Arthur's house. Not every day, but once in a while. I would say hello. I would ask about his roses. At first, he would just nod or give one-word answers. It was like trying to open a door that had been rusted shut for years. But I kept trying. I brought him a coffee one morning. He took it without saying thank you, but he drank it. Slowly, like a flower turning toward the sun, he began to open up. He started talking. It wasn't about the weather or the town gossip. He started talking about a time long before he lived on Maple Street, a time when he was a young man in a uniform. He told me about the war. He spoke of sounds that never left his memory, the sounds of bombs and shouting. He described the friends he lost, young men who went to sleep one night and never woke up. He talked about the fear, a cold thing that lived in his stomach day and night. He told me he learned not to get close to people because people could be taken away in an instant. His stories were not grand tales of heroism. They were quiet, painful memories that had followed him home. Memories that had built the walls around his heart long before our town built its own walls around his house. He explained that loud noises made him jump. A car backfiring sounded like a gunshot. A knock on the door felt like an intrusion, a threat. He preferred to be alone because in his mind, being alone was being safe. His anger, the thing we all saw, was just a shield. It was the only way he knew how to keep the world at a safe distance. He wasn't trying to be mean. He was just trying to survive the war that was still raging inside his head, a war that no one else could see or hear. He was a soldier still on duty, guarding a post that only he knew existed. As I listened, I saw a different man. I no longer saw the difficult neighbor. I saw a young boy who went to war and never quite came home. I saw the pain he carried, a weight so heavy that it bent his shoulders and hardened his eyes. His gruffness was not a sign of a bad heart, but a broken one. He had seen too much. He had lost too much. And all this time we had judged the man he had become, without ever wondering about the boy he had been. We saw the closed door, but we never thought to ask why it was locked so tightly. I knew I couldn't keep Arthur's story to myself. It wasn't my story to hold on to. It belonged to the town, the same town that had misjudged him for so long. So I started to share it. I spoke to my neighbor, the one who had offered the pie. I talked to the mailman. I told the story at the local diner over coffee. I didn't share every painful detail. I just shared enough. I explained that Arthur was a veteran, that his time in the war had left deep scars, scars that made it hard for him to connect with people. I explained that his silence was not anger, but a deep, lingering sadness. Something beautiful began to happen. The stories about Arthur started to change. The whispers didn't stop, but now they were whispers of sympathy, not judgment. People started to understand. The woman who baked the pie baked another one, but this time she left it on his porch with a simple note. "Thank you for your service." The mailman started leaving a friendly note with the mail. People who walked past his house no longer crossed the street. Instead, they would offer a quiet nod or a small, gentle wave. They didn't expect one in return. It was a simple gesture of respect. The change was slow, but it was real. One Saturday, a few men from the town showed up at Arthur's house with lawnmowers and hedge trimmers. They didn't ask. They just started working on his messy yard. Arthur came out looking confused, maybe a little scared. One of the men, a man named Bob, simply said, "We thought you could use a hand, Arthur." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in Arthur's eyes. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. He went back inside, but he left the door open a little. He watched them work, a silent guardian of his small, changing world. The town had not fixed Arthur. His pain did not disappear. The war in his mind did not end. He was still a quiet man. He was still guarded. But something else had changed. We had changed. Our town had learned a powerful lesson. We learned that behind every difficult person, there is a story. And once you hear that story, everything looks different. We stopped seeing the grumpy man on the corner. We started seeing Arthur, a man who had carried a heavy burden all alone for far too long. And our small town became a little bigger that day, its heart expanding with a newfound compassion. The story of Arthur teaches us a simple truth. We are all walking around with invisible stories. We all have our own private battles, our own silent heartaches. We see a person's anger, but we don't see their pain. We see their distance, but we don't see their fear. We judge the chapter of their life we walk in on, without knowing anything about the chapters that came before. We are so quick to write people off, to put them in a box with a simple label. But people are not simple. They are complicated and messy, beautiful and broken, all at the same time. Kindness is the key that can unlock these hidden stories. A small act of understanding can change everything. It doesn't mean you have to become best friends with every difficult person you meet. It just means you have to remember that they are a person, just like you. It means choosing compassion over judgment. It means offering a little bit of grace, even when it's not easy. Think about the people in your own life, the quiet coworker, the grumpy cashier, the distant family member. What stories might they be carrying? What battles are they fighting that you know nothing about? We can't erase the hardships that people face. We cannot take away their pain, but we can choose to be a safe harbor instead of another storm. We can offer a gentle wave, a quiet nod, a simple act of service. These small things can make a big difference. They can remind someone that they are not alone. They can be a tiny light in a very dark room. Arthur never became the life of the party. He remained a quiet man, but he was no longer an outcast. He was a part of our community. He was our Arthur. In the end, this is what it means to be a community. It is not about everyone being the same or everyone being easy to love. It is about loving people even when they are not. It is about holding space for each other's pain. It is about remembering that we are all connected, all part of the same human story. So let us try to be a little kinder. Let us try to understand a little more. Let us look for the story behind the person, because when we do, we build a world where everyone, even the man on the corner, can feel like they belong.